some new polling just out was really eye-popping to me.
It was shocking to me, John. Party ID margin, Dem versus Republicans. Specifically, I'm talking about Gallup. Back in Q1 of 2025, it was a tie. Look at how much Democrats have gained on this metric, according to Gallup. Their latest metric, Democrats are ahead by 7 points. That is a 7-point movement to the left. I looked at some other pollsters as well to see if there was similar movement. Among Quinnipiac, it was +1 Republican. And you can see, again, movement to the left, Democrats +3. You know, last year, going into the 2024 presidential election, that was the rare time in which Republicans actually held a lead in Gallup's Party ID measure. That Republican lead is no more. Adios, amigos, eliminated. Now Democrats ahead by 7 points, at least according to Gallup.
What's up, everybody? Major retired Richard Ojeda here, and Americans are waking up. They've had enough of the circus, the grift, and the endless parade of narcissists treating the people's house like their personal casino. The polls prove it. According to a new Gallup poll, there's been a 7-point swing towards Democrats. The kind of swing pollsters call no historical precedent.
Okay, right now we got the Democrats ahead by 7. You go back 4 years ago, the Democrats were only ahead by 1 point. This doesn't look anything like what we had at this point going into the 2022 midterm cycle. It looks much more like what we had going into the 2018 midterm cycle, in which Democrats were ahead by 4 points. They're actually doing better at this point than they were doing during the 2018 cycle. Look at this. Democrats were ahead by only a point. When the Dems gain House seats, look at this. Democrats are ahead by 8 points. Democrats are up by 7 right now. If this 7-point lead holds in the next year and it averages out next year in 2026, Democrats +7, there is no historical precedent for Republicans actually gaining House seats. The Democrats gain in every year. That looks like what Gallup shows right now.
Republicans have spent years bragging about momentum, but they've hit a brick wall called reality. Their so-called base is exhausted. Their movement is fractured. The MAGA machine is running on fumes, and the numbers don't lie. And while CNN's data team was stunned by the math, MSNBC's Morning Joe just laughed.
The latest Reuters Ipsos poll finds that half of Americans blame Republicans in Congress for the shutdown. That's compared to 43% who blame Democrats, 50 to 43. And a majority, including almost all Democrats and half of Republicans, said the expiring health insurance subsidies should be extended.
Democrats actually figured out how to be on the right side of an issue and actually be able to explain it to the American people in a way that they would be on their side. Boom. We dream no more. 72% of Americans, come on, hard to believe, 72% of Americans are on Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries' side. They're actually winning this debate.
Boom, Joe Scarborough shouted as the latest Ipsos Reuters poll dropped. 72% of Americans, yes, 72, support the Democratic position on extending health care subsidies, the very issue at the center of the shutdown. The GOP isn't fighting for working families. They're fighting for photo ops. They're not defending the Constitution. They're defending one man's criminal ego. Every scandal, every shutdown, every culture war tantrum is just another distraction from the same truth. They have no plan to make your life better. Republicans have built their entire identity around resentment, but resentment doesn't govern. It corrodes. It eats its own. And now it's turning inward. You can see it in Congress, where Republican leaders can't even agree on a budget, let alone a vision. You can see it in the polls, where independents are breaking hard against them. You can see it in the streets, where protests like No Kings are gaining traction because Americans, right, left, and center, are done being ruled by billionaires and bullies. This is the fallout of decades of hypocrisy. A party that preaches morality while drowning in scandal. That claims to love freedom while banning books and burning rights. That worships the flag but spits on the people who died defending it. And still, they can't understand why the numbers keep dropping. Maybe it's because Americans remember the last shutdown. They remember the chaos, the cruelty, the paychecks that didn't come, the services that stopped. They remember who was laughing about the Fox News while real families suffered. They remember who built walls instead of bridges, who padded the pockets of the rich while calling teachers lazy. Americans have finally seen what happens when the mask slips off. The MAGA myth has rotted from the inside. The so-called patriots waving flags and chanting freedom are now bulldozing the East Wing to make way for a ballroom. The symbolism symbolism couldn't be clearer. While he tears up sacred ground to build a monument to himself, voters are tearing up their Republican registrations. You can't claim to fight for the people while paving over the people's house. You can't preach patriotism while selling your soul to Vladimir Putin. You can't call yourself a Christian movement while cheering on cruelty, corruption, and deceit. But here's the part they didn't plan for. Americans are done being owned. They're done being lied to. The same ordinary people they mocked, gaslit, and ignored are now the ones shifting the numbers. This is the sound of accountability catching up. It's the sound of voters realizing that patriotism isn't about worshiping a man. It's about protecting a nation. You know, at the end of the day, there's something every American needs to face right now. Vladimir Putin has everything on Donald Trump. Everything. Every nasty secret, every dark deed, every backroom deal. Putin's got it all. Because once again, Donald Trump is doing exactly what Vladimir Putin tells him to do. Every time Trump says, we're going to send certain missiles to Ukraine, Putin makes a call, and suddenly Trump changes his tune. That's not leadership. That's obedience. Donald Trump is owned, flat out owned, controlled by a foreign dictator who plays him like a damn fiddle. And while Putin's pulling the strings, the rest of us are forced to dance to their miserable tune. That's not strength. That's servitude. And let's not forget, this is the same pathological liar who swore up and down that his so-called ballroom renovation wasn't even touching the White House. Well, guess what? They've ripped half of the people's house wide open. The White House isn't his to remodel. It's ours. It's the people's house. And if that doesn't infuriate you as an American, I don't know what will. Because nobody spends $250 million on a ballroom in a house they plan on leaving. Nobody. He's militarizing ICE. He's weaponizing the Justice Department. He's surrounding himself with loyalists and cowards, people too afraid to tell him no and too greedy to care. These are not the actions of a man preparing to leave office. These are the moves of a man preparing to never let go. And I'll tell you what, the military brass better wake up, because resigning isn't resistance, it's surrender. If you spent 30 to 40 years wearing that uniform, then damn it, you stand and fight for what it represents. You don't walk away because things got uncomfortable. You swore an oath, not to a man, but to the Constitution. Donald Trump is turning the armed forces, the intelligence community, and the federal government into his own personal Praetorian Guard. And it's up to every single American with a backbone to push back. Because if you think he's going to stop with the ballroom, you're wrong. The next thing he builds will be a prison for anyone who dared to stand in his way. This is not a game anymore. This is not a reality show. This is a dismantling of democracy in real time. And make no mistake, history will remember this moment. It'll remember the silence, the cowardice, the complicity. It'll remember who stood up and who bowed down. So ask yourself, when the next generation looks back and asks what we did when democracy was on the line, what's your answer going to be? Did you fight? Did you speak up? Or did you just let it happen? Because right now, the ball's not in Donald Trump's new ballroom. It's in ours. And the next move, the one that decides whether this country stands free or falls to tyranny, is ours to make. And that is an absolute fact. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.